If you're curious to hear a little music from our guest Carla Lucero, who we spoke to in our most recent episode, check out E4TT's annual concert of music by women and non-binary composers, Midnight Serenades, on January 25th. Welcome to For Good Measure, an interview series celebrating diverse composers and other creative artists, sponsored by a grant from the California Arts Council. I'm Nanette McGuinness, Artistic Executive Director of Ensemble for these times. In this week's episode, we continue our Da Capo Conversations, a mini-series where we'll be giving familiar segments a topical twist. Today we revisit Vivian Fung's and Pamela Z's perspectives on their compositional process. Here's what Vivian Fung had to say.
I think process is a really good word. I really love talking about process when I talk about composition because the end result is almost like a byproduct. When I teach, I really like to talk about the process and how things tend to work. I think that once I get into the process of composing, it almost takes over for me. I can't really describe, the technical details, but I can describe the feeling I get. If I go into that flow of working and composing, and actually deadlines are really helpful to me. Like knowing that there is an end game, my adrenaline kicks in and I kind of go into the zone of making, and doing. And it almost becomes like a spiritual process to me because there is a higher power for me that takes over, so to speak. I mean, not really, but, I feel like there is something guiding me. And that guidance is in the form of intuition maybe, or years of doing this, what have you, but it takes over. That sort of intuition takes over and it almost guides me to choose my notes and to choose what I need to do. That being said, of course, years of craft and years of, doing this has certainly helped. And I also think of architecture as a very important role into crafting the whole piece so that it has to have an inherent flow and inherent logic to it. But process for me is really important. And that idea of this, I don't know, this letting that force take over.
Here's what Pamela Z had to say.
I don't prefer one or the other. But they are different, and I like it that they're different. I think it makes life more interesting that I have these different approaches. And then I thought it would be helpful to break down for you the different ways that I compose and the different types of work that I do. I've done all kinds of things, but the things I do regularly kind of break down into 4 categories. And one category would be my solo works for voice and electronics that involve, me singing with my gear, like processing and gesture controllers, and maybe occasionally a single channel of video being projected. And then I have these large-scale performance works that are more theatrical in nature, and they involve often multiple channels of projected video. They sometimes involve other performers. They usually have a lighting design and a set design and involve maybe some kind of movement on the stage and maybe even props. So there's those 2 things. And then I also do a lot of chamber compositions these days. And this will be works that were commissioned either by an ensemble or a soloist. Those pieces sometimes include a part for my own voice and electronics, and other times it's just for the ensemble. And then there is installation, which sometimes takes the form of just sound work that's just a stereo sound work that's just a fixed media piece that's intended to be listened to, or a multi-channel fixed media piece that is intended to be projected through an array of a lot of speakers, or it might be installation work that involves, sound and video, often sound or video embedded in objects. And so these are kind of 4 different ways that I work. The other thing I often do when I'm composing work for chamber ensembles is that I tend to begin building phrases either by singing them or, listening to the text and finding melody in the text and singing that and then transcribing what that is. But however I come about deciding the notes, the pitches and rhythms that I'm going to give to the ensemble, there is a point in time where I enter things in using a MIDI keyboard, and I put them into MIDI tracks in Pro Tools, and I sort of construct the piece there. And then I export all the MIDI out and import it into Sibelius, which is a notation program that I use. And then I sort of work on fudging the score and cleaning it up and making it be what it's supposed to be. And then I have to work on how do I express all the things that are not notes, that are not standard notation type of ideas. How do I express those in the score and make it so that it's legible and understandable for whoever it is that's going to be performing it? So that's kind of one way that I work. If I'm making pieces that are just for my solo voice and electronics, the way that I tend to start with those is by setting up all my gear as if I was going to give a performance in my studio. Everything that I need, all of my controllers, my everything. And then I start playing and I improvise a lot. And I come up with ideas by doing. Mm-hmm. And often those things kind of almost come to me whole cloth. I'll just be playing around and then all of a sudden I'll realize, the last 5 minutes that I just did, that's a piece. And then I have to go back and hopefully I was recording and I have to go back and learn it.
Thank you for listening to For Good Measures Da Capo Conversations, and a special thank you to our guests for joining us today. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our podcast by clicking on the subscribe button and support us by sharing it with your friends, posting about it on social media, and leaving us a rating and a review. To learn more about E4TT, our concert season online and in the Bay Area, or to make a tax-deductible donation, please visit us at www.e4tt.org. This podcast is made possible in part by a grant from the California Arts Council and generous donors like you. For Good Measures produced by Nanette McGuinness and Ensemble for These Times and designed by Brennan Stokes, with special thanks to co-producer and audio engineer Stephanie M. Neumann. Remember to keep supporting equity in the arts and tune in next week for Good Measure.